Welcome to this episode of Wine Talks British Business. Annabelle Bond, OBE, earned the title Fastest Woman Climber in the World in 2005 after scaling the highest peaks on the 7 continents in just 360 days. She has applied her determination and talents to many different causes, and she has been awarded the Order of the British Empire by the Queen of England for her services to mountaineering and charity. Annabelle mentions that it is important to have the right mindset and that you can apply this to anything. One of the most beautiful moments in life that she had was having wine and pizza in the most extraordinary of locations. Taking that moment to appreciate her surroundings has lasted with her. Annabelle, thanks for being here and putting some time aside to sit down and have this chat with me today, that we're going to find out all about you and this incredible life path that you've had and these amazing achievements. Before we dive in too much, I wanted to get a bit of an intro on yourself and what you've been up to and what led up, or rather what led you up to climbing Mount Everest and doing all these amazing feats. What were you up to before then?
Gosh, it was kind of interesting because, well, I always think one of the big parts of doing anything successful means that you're generally coming from some point of failure. And in my case, I'd left my job in Hong Kong where I was a director of the company that I worked at. And I'd moved to the States to get engaged to my boyfriend here of 5 years. And of course, it didn't work out. So, you've given up your job, you've given up, and that was my identity. And I was sort of working hard here. And then I got into, instead of sort of going and sitting in a therapist's office, I decided I would take myself off on this journey of adventure. So I just decided I would go off to Bolivia. And I set myself this challenge. I would go and climb 3 peaks in Bolivia. And then I went on to ride horses across Peru. I ran the Inca Trail. So I was doing lots of, my therapy was basically physical and exploratory. I was just seeing the world and on my own and with friends occasionally. And that ultimately led to an invite to go to Everest. And it kind of happened from there.
So a lot of it was about pushing a reset button. You're taking some time out. Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? And things unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you learn so much from failure. I mean, I had this failed relationship. I'd now left my job. When the moment in a sales job that you hand over your clients, the job kind of like goes to somebody else. So I didn't want to go back to Hong Kong at that point. So I took this time to just go and just explore and just see the world. And then I was back in London. Actually, I was trying to do an adventure travel show. I'd pitched the BBC and I was like, listen, I mean, this is quite a while back. You've got to take your time. It was 2003. And I'm like, we want to do an adventure travel show and, take viewers to see the world, to cool places. Like I was remote parts of Peru and educational and a travel show. And they basically went, we love that idea, but you are too unknown to be our biggest budget TV presenter, kind of, get on. Yeah, as only England could, right? Plus, we think you've got too Sloanian an accent. We don't like that either. So I got told to get stuffed by the BBC. And then it just transpired. There was this opportunity to go with a Chilean team to Everest. And what started as a joke, I took seriously. And that was my path, that took me there. And it was actually a really life-changing experience going.
Of course. I mean, it's not a small thing to do at all. How fit were you?
Especially when you're scared of heights.
Especially when you're scared of heights. Definitely jumping in there.
I know.
So how fit were you at the start then, before taking this on?
So when I was in Hong Kong, I had always competed in this, I kind of got roped in to this 103 kilometer mountain marathon, which covered about 27,000 feet of vertical. Wow. And so I had done this race and the training leading up to this race, which was like a military expedition. And I'd done this race 4 times. My fastest time was 16 hours. So I knew that I could run for 16 hours. I knew how to operate outside of my comfort zone. So this race really taught me a lot about, handling your physical limits and, how I can push myself, pushing through pain barriers and that sort of thing. So I was in pretty good running shape, but that doesn't necessarily equate to being able to go to altitude. As it transpired that I actually could, but some of the fittest people on my team couldn't get above Everest Base Camp because of altitude issues. So you've got to remember that you can be super fit at sea level, but that does not necessarily guarantee that you'll be great and strong in the mountains. Like, it could be the fat guy from the pub could be way stronger than the triathlete climbing Everest.
Do you know why that is?
I think it's just physiology, actually. I think I think from what I read, there's only a quarter of the people in the world that can actually go above 16,000 feet.
Okay.
So, obviously you need to acclimatize, and I do think you can train yourself to be in better shape to go to altitude. But, once you start having issues up there, it's very scary when you can't breathe, when you feel like that. It's not a fun experience.
Well, and the thing is, you're very far from any sense of help. It's not that straightforward.
No, of course not. You're relying on people to get you into a Gamow bag. So, it was all just a journey for me. And, sometimes, some days you felt great, and some days, you had a pounding headache that wouldn't go. But at the end of it, I could go to altitude. So that was great.
I understand that you have a fear of heights. Is that right?
It is. I know everyone laughs. For me, psychologically, that was my biggest issue, was actually getting over the ladders in the Khumbu Icefall. And it's hard because we're just on audio, but if I'm explaining to the audience, it's a 3,000 feet vertical labyrinth of blocks of ice, which is a constant moving glacier. So it's creaking, it's falling, it's you never go through the same route twice. And then you've got these rickety aluminium ladders, and maybe up to like 5 tied together at once, going over a gap into the epicenter of the earth. So you really don't want to fall off one of those ladders. And so for me, just the ladders were the hardest part, because you're looking into an abyss and it's a sheer drop. And even though you would die if you fell on some of the snow faces, because it's snow, it doesn't look sheer, if you get my drift. So I can get my head around the snow, but I can't get my head around the sheer drop.
Literally a very long way down. And I've seen the TV program. Those ladders, they look rickety at best, to be frank.
That's an understatement. And also, you travel through the icefall at like 4 a.m. And I remember we had to do a descent. We were coming back down from Camp 2, and it was probably about noon, 1 o'clock, and it was hot. You forget the Khumbu, the Western Khum can be like a solar oven. It can be really hot. So if the ice screws that hold the ladders and the snow is melting around it, you don't know if that ice screw is going to hold the ladder if you fall. So my expedition leader was on a ladder that fell, and we managed to get him. You could have heard my screams in Kathmandu, but anyway, we got him. But it was, it's just an adrenaline journey through that icefall, I can tell you. And I also remember saying to the Chilean, our leader, I said, "Oh, should I wear a helmet in the icefall?" And he looked at me and he's just like, "Gringa, just don't bother." So basically, if something lands on your head, you're dead.
Yeah. So how did you deal with your fear, other than just sort of head down and getting on with it, which is such a great way to be, this sort of driven determination? Did you have any other coping mechanisms?
In the Khumbu Icefall, it's the first obstacle from base camp. So I had to get across those ladders. So I had to literally mentally talk myself. I had to go, statistically, it is not going to happen to you. It's just not. And I would also crawl across the ladders because my crampons didn't fit over the rungs. And I had open wounds on my knees from repeatedly crawling over the ladders. But you just have to control your mind. Visions of sort of cliffhanger have to disappear. You've got to I just looked at the other side and tried not to look down and just crawled across.
Were there times when you thought, you know, this is too much? I mean, I'm picking up a lot of determination from you, but I imagine once you're in that position, you know, you're in that situation, there's a lot there to take on board and to challenge yourself.
I was pretty driven then. I mean, to be honest with you, nothing would have stopped me getting across, but I would be physically shaking with fear on the ladders. It was, I was on all fours and the ladders would be going with my shaking. I mean, I was like, I really don't need that additional, movement. But I just knew I had to get across them. There was just, when you leave no option. And I'm so thankful that I was that headstrong at the time.
I think that's it. As you're saying, you set yourself a path, or on a path you'd started, and then you were just determination. You got to do it. There was no turning back. I mean, I'm already picking up that from you. You're not the only woman in your family to step out of her comfort zone on an epic adventure, because your grandmother, Christine Bond, explored Nepal and the Himalayas, even some of Mount Everest back in 1928, I believe. Is there something in the blood, do you think, within your family, that you're all explorers?
Well, my mum would be very chuffed to be put in that bracket. No, my grandmother was a pretty amazing woman, I have to say. I mean, she lived till she was 104. She walked every day she believed in exercise, some form of exercise. So I thought, to go off in 1929 when it was unheard of to do this huge journey by ship, which it was back then, for a woman, and to go and be exploring in the Himalayas, I thought was really cool. So she, in my mind, has always been like a pioneer of adventure travel and just getting out of your comfort zone and living, like doing things. My grandfather was so ashamed of what she'd done. I mean, can you imagine, like in those days, that was not the sort of thing women did? You were either a secretary or a nurse, or it was very stigmatized. And he was embarrassed, so he threw away all her like crampons and her ice axe. And it was never spoken about. And I remember suddenly when I was 15, getting my hands on these photos and seeing my granny on pulleys going over river crossings. I was thinking, wow. Looking at grey-haired granny with glasses, I was like, suddenly you've become really cool, granny. I was like, it's amazing what you've done. You can't correlate the two, right? She's sitting there in the living room. But anyway, I thought she was an amazing woman.
I've got here that you carried a Nepalese good luck charm, which I think was your grandmother's.
She gave me a few. I had some, I think they're sort of turquoisey beads, and I had a little four-leaf clover from her, and I wore that I had carried that the whole time. And then I had, you get very spiritual when you're in Nepal, and you really don't want anything to happen when you're putting yourself into that potential statistic. So I did everything, when in Rome, I did everything that was expected of that the Nepalese liked, and the Sherpas. I respected everything, and most of all, I respected the mountain.
That's very important, because you're in an alien environment, and there's no harm of having good luck charms or just being respectful. As you say, it is about being respectful to your companions and to the area.
Yeah, no, definitely. You want to be doing everything, everything right, and not upsetting any of them. So, but I had my good luck charms with me everywhere. Everyone had given me something. My mom was like, don't forget your gloves, darling. I'm like, thanks, Mom. I'll try not to. Only -30.
Every time you put on your gloves, like, thanks, Mum.
Yeah, I know.
I imagine one of the hardest parts or things of doing such an amazing feat is having the strength to keep going, and a lot of mental determination, and you're clearly a very driven woman. How did you keep your focus?
Well, in some of your darkest moments, and trust me, there are quite a few, I think it's really good to have another sense of purpose. And for me, I was carrying the Eva Peel flag, which specialized in the prevention of ovarian cancer. Wow. So, you just think, I kind of felt, I know it sounds sort of cheesy, but I kind of felt like I was doing this for all women, just as remember to get vigilant, get screened, and raise money. It's the second most dangerous cancer outside of breast cancer. So I had that, to do it for them. I had all the Eva Peel rooting for me. I got a lot of money every camp that I got to for the charity. So there was another pressure to try and make it to the top. I mean, I got a substantial amount each camp. The higher I went from one very generous sponsor. And the other element, which I always touch on because I think it's so important, is I knew that there was a woman who'd done the 7 summits in 4 months. I mean, in 14 months. So she was ahead of me. So in some of my darkest moments, it was the element of competition, also healthy competition. Yeah. I'm like, if she can do it, I can. And that's why I always, I have this issue in schools today where they've removed the element of competition, because I think it's a motivator. And I think healthy competition in our children is super important. And for me, that was another thing. It wasn't on Everest because I hadn't decided the 7 summits then, but on the other mountains, when I had some very dark moments, it was the fact she was ahead of me. That's what I wanted to beat her. I didn't want us to have a joint record. I wanted to, and that was a motivator. So I do think that's an important part of, it certainly is an important part of who I am and my genetic makeup. My whole life, I've always had healthy competition. But I've also been if I lose, I'm a dignified loser. Not that I like that to happen a lot, but anyway.
We won't mention that. But it's clear it's determination.
Yes. Well, I'm a very disciplined person. I believe in that. It's the early bird gets the worm. I'm up early in the morning. I try and squeeze as much as I can into my day. I'm very driven. I'm very motivated, and I'm also competitive on certain things.
And it's about all of that coming together. That's what I'm picking up on. It's all these elements of you that enables you to achieve and to set out on these amazing feats. Let's be honest.
But, my point also is that these are also traits that other people could easily adapt to do whatever they want to do. I'm not telling everyone that you should go to Everest, but, it could be an artist could paint a painting, or, someone could get some, promotion at their work. You can apply those traits to anything in this day and age, right? Set up your own tech company, or, it takes competition, it takes drive, and it takes discipline. It applies in all areas.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, as you say, having the focus, the determination to not just set out your goal, but to start. It's only the cliche, but it generally is the hardest thing is starting. But yeah. As you say, you've just got to get on with it and get going.
I know, that's the famous Chinese Lao Tzu that says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. I mean, that was, you just got to get going, get cracking, give everything a try. And if you fail, do something else.
So all of these events that we've been discussing that you're known for, what's the clearest things that you can remember about being stuck back then and the everyday life of being on the mountain?
I remember my mountain journeys like they were yesterday. There's, the whole sort of discomfort of camping for starters. Let's start there. The outside loo, going to the loo in your tent because you have to. All British people like to discuss the loo, don't they? So high up on the mountain, you have to pee or go to the loo in the tent. If there's a storm, you can't go outside. So there's that element of discomfort. There's the very basic food. Actually, in Nepal, the food was very good at base camp. But once you go up the mountain, it's sort of basic food. It's not being able to speak to the person sleeping right next to you because the wind is so insanely loud, you can't hear each other. I remember all that vividly. I remember everything from mountain life. But then there was like some incredible experiences. I remember finishing climbing in Antarctica, and it's 24-hour daylight. And I remember, sitting there, the sun was up, we'd finished our climb, and you'll love this, someone had towed in a case of wine to our base camp. So we had like wine out of plastic cups and a pizza. And I remember just thinking, this is one of those moments in life you want to freeze the clock. It's so beautiful. We've done we've reached our goal, and now we're sitting here with a glass of wine and a pizza. And so I had some incredible moments that I remember too.
How do you think it affected you afterwards, having done all these amazing feats and achieved so much? As a person, how were you post-climb?
The first thing is that I'm glad I did I spent a whole year away from all my friends and family, and I'm so glad I did, because I had this hugely enriching experience. I've gone to all these countries I'd never been to, continents I'd never been to, and then you can slot straight back in with your friends, having had this incredible experience, and they're just doing the same thing. So that's the first thing. Always go off and do something, because your friends you'll always be able to slot back in. Yeah. And secondly, I think the most profound effect on me is that you get this confidence in yourself, because you believe in yourself and your ability to do things. So I think it's made me a much more confident person. I was quite an insecure sort of teen, couldn't go anywhere without one of my friends, that kind of thing. And now, I have no issue walking into a room alone with a whole group of people. I'm just completely comfortable in my own skin. And I think that's from one of the most important things I've got from that experience.
Yeah, it's what you're able to bring. That's what I'm picking up on, is, obviously your confidence from having achieved so much. But I imagine a lot of it is also a learning process for oneself and having a lot of alone time. I mean, did that affect you at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't really particularly enjoy my own company prior to climbing. And, you get used to, you get used to being on your own. You get used to dealing with other people. You learn so many life lessons, I think, outside of your comfort zone. And I think, how to treat other people and how to behave yourself. So, and how to deal with pain and how not to be a whiner. I mean, no one wants a whiner when we're all feeling the same pain, right? And I always did a lot of my extreme sports with men. So no one wants someone that's annoying. We're all, there's no chivalry in the mountains. No one's going, oh, can I carry your backpack for you? Everyone's got to just pull their weight. And I think that was an important lesson to learn on and off the mountain.
So about standing up and getting on with it is what I'm picking up from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just deal with, everyone's in the same shit, right? So just deal with it and try and have a laugh, or try and make other people, just cope, and don't be the weak link. Don't be the annoying one that no one wants to be around. So I just, that's kind of, another thing that I learned in these extreme environments.
And it is, as we're mentioning, is just getting on with it. You say you may not be at your fittest at moments and you may have emotional lows, but having the determination, and that's also partly confidence, I think, to just going to keep going. It's the classic one foot in front of the other. Just something you mentioned a lot.
Absolutely, it was, and just don't let the team down. Just be a team player. That's the main thing. I mean, climbing's this sort of, it's kind of a combination of teamwork, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's very much an individual thing too, because you've got to completely account for yourself. I mean, we had this rule on the Chilean team that above 7,000 meters, you're on your own. And I supported that rule because, if you don't feel good going on your summit day, if you have a headache or a stomach ache or any ache, you need to not go. So it's all about putting responsibility in yourself and not, collapsing on the summit and expecting people to carry you down. So it's very much, I supported the Chileans with that decision. We had a team decision on it. But actually, I think I wouldn't want to have put it to the test. I mean, I'm sure they would have helped if something had happened, but they set it as a rule. Because, this whole controversy at how to deal with crises at the top of the mountain. Everyone wants to help. It's, are people able to help? That's the real answer, People sit and judge at sea level and go, oh, he should have done that at 27,000 feet. We don't know how each person's feeling up there.
Well, it's very different circumstances, situations, and as you say, until you're in that moment and you're doing that, how do you know how you would behave? I completely agree.
So I mean, I'm sure they would have helped if there'd been a crisis. Luckily, we didn't put it to the test. But it's it's the same as people when we sit here in England and we judge about how soldiers are fighting in Afghanistan. How can we do that? We don't know what that environment's like. I mean, I don't know what it's like with someone trying to shoot you every second. Do you know what I mean? It's like, who are we to judge how they should behave when their lives are under threat? It's the same thing on mountain climbing.
I'm really picking up on this attitude, and I guess almost ethos, just getting on with it from you. Really much like this, just keep going, driving forward.
Yeah, and just be accountable for yourself, be responsible.
So your father, Sir John Bond was a very successful businessman. I believe he was the former chairman of HSBC. And I've got here, he's still working right into, I think he's nearly 80 now. How big an influence was he on you? Because I'm picking up, you're drawing a lot from your family. Obviously, we mentioned your grandmother, but I imagine your father's been quite an influence too.
Yeah, he's been, I mean, I have to say he's the most, I mean, he's so inspirational. We've been so lucky getting such a great dad. He started out at the bottom, putting literally stamps on an envelope at HSBC. So he's your perfect example of someone who worked their way up a huge organization. I mean, I can't imagine, getting to the top, going through, I don't know how many staff they have, 30,000. So, I had him as an amazing role model because he just put his head down and he worked. And I remember saying to him, how did they know that you were on the path to be in one of the number one positions? And he said early on he took some banking exams and he said, I worked my backside off, and he came out as one of the top people in the country on these exams. So he said once he'd done that, he was on their trajectory. They were aware of him and what he was doing. So he's been a great inspiration in just following him and how he's lived his life. He can be quite formidable. I was very naughty at school. I didn't like to be on the receiving end of his phone calls or his stare. I mean, he only had to stare, and I literally would shake in my shoes. So, but he's a very loving, amazing father, and a huge intellect. So poor him, we will be mucking around, and he's like being silly, and he's sort of studying complex countries and China and understanding the world. But he's an amazing man, and I couldn't have been luckier to have him.
I've got here, has he started climbing himself now?
It's funny because when he retired from HSBC, he wanted to go and meet all the Sherpas that were on my Everest expedition. So he went with Mum to Nepal to try and get to base camp. Sadly, Mum got altitude sickness, so she had to go back. And he went the next year to say thank you to all our Sherpas. And he made base camp. And then he went on to do Kilimanjaro. So, good for him. And he's still every day. Actually, I just was over with him now. And he's just come back from a 4-hour hike in Hong Kong. And he's pretty amazing. The one thing I would give advice to anybody, the fountain of youth is in exercise. And I really believe in that. It's
also part of this keep going attitude, isn't it? As you say, it's getting outside, getting on with it, driving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have days where we feel lethargic, but then you've just got to be disciplined. And then, once you come back from a run or a bike or whatever, you feel great. And then you think, wow, that lethargy's gone.
It's definitely a good mood enhancer, exercise. I think that's the perfect way to say it.
Oh, especially with what's going on now. I mean, it's key to keep your mental health. I mean, for me, it's just been like, if I feel crappy about something, I'll go for a run, and whatever, things that you think are just like literally your world could come to an end, after a run, they feel fine.
So as you've mentioned, you're based out in Hong Kong now, and I believe a lot of your family is too. What's life like out there?
I'm really glad you asked me this because, I've just been watching the news and I'm really upset to see all this anti-China sentiment, and especially from the UK. And by the way, you heard it here first. I really think they're backing the wrong horse. It's an amazing place. I mean, obviously, I've been here when it was under British, colonial days, and I've been here through the handover, and I've seen, still here with our post 97. It's an amazing place. Hong Kong, everyone thinks it's like just this metropolis of buildings, and we have the most amazing country parks. There's incredible running trails. Tomorrow I'm off mountain biking. We've got terrain parks, we've got amazing beaches, boating, wake surfing. I mean, it's really a phenomenal city, and it's safe. In this day and age, I think safety is looking at some of the crimes and stuff going on in London, I just feel like Hong Kong is safe, it's well run, it's clean, And it's a place that seems to promote, everyone wants to work. There's a great work ethic. People want to just make money and, look after their families and have a nice life. I personally don't worry about China at all. I think, I've spent enough time understanding the history of Hong Kong, and Hong Kong always did belong to China. It was rightfully theirs to take back. And as a matter of fact, having been in China every month, it's phenomenal what's going on there, the other side of the border. You can see them coming out of poverty and just this incredible success on infrastructure and development and technology. And it's just amazing to witness firsthand.
Well, I mean, it's good to hear, to know that people are getting on with everything all over the world. And obviously with you being there, you can vouch for that.
I mean, I really can. And it's funny because so many of my friends just listen to the media and they're like, so anti-China. And it's like, have you ever been? Have you ever bothered to learn China history? Do you understand anything about China? I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on there. I mean, they've invested 30 billion in education technology. They have 2,400 kilometers of high-speed trains going to all over China. So people in the most poorest parts are getting a really good education and they want to learn. And the efficiency is just incredible. Like, it's a can-do place. I mean, I think a lot of our society don't like the idea of rules, but actually, when you have a kid like I do, I like the idea of living in a safe city that's well run. I don't want to be worried about where my kid is. Will she get stabbed when she comes home or anything like that?
It's good when things work, to put it simply, as we're discussing. And it's nice to hear how on it and how advanced it seems to be over there for you.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it will blow you away. And it's just, I mean, it's only when you live here and then you travel to other countries that you realize how far behind the other countries are falling. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. But and again, just to reiterate, because you're there, you're able to vouch for this, and you can see it happening in the progression, which we're not always made aware of.
No, and it's sad to see our politicians so anti-China, and I know it's very hard to deal with a rising superpower, but nothing's stopping them. So you either work with them or you pay the price. But given that, anyway, it's phenomenal to watch, and I just hope that the world will work with China rather than try and fight it or prevent it, because it's not preventable. And I think it will be win-win if we all work with them.
I wanted to discuss with you some of the other organisations that you've worked with or been involved with too. And you're also an ambassador of the Laureus Sport for Good, which is quite a reach for many sports people being involved. Can you talk to me more about what you do with them?
Yeah, so I got involved with them as soon as I finished climbing in 2005. And for those that don't know Laureus Sport for Good, it's the charity arm of Richemont, which is, Johan Rupert, the South African owner of Richemont's charity arm. They do so much. I mean, they've partnered with a lot of charitable projects in Hong Kong, so I've done stuff with Operation Breakthrough, which helps troubled teens through sport. They've helped in South Africa with the WAVE project, taking underprivileged people to go and surf, to teach them. They've helped with sustainability in villages. So it's very diverse, big thing on mental health right now. And so what I did was I introduced Laureus to a girlfriend of mine called Lucy Bennett Baggs, who has a company called Just Challenge. And she likes to take people on these challenges, 100K challenges over 4 days. And you have to pay a minimum amount to go on the challenge. And the money goes to Laureus, and we bring celebrity sports stars. So we had on our last one, we had Brian O'Driscoll for amazing. My dad would have loved to have gone on that with him, and then Brian Habana from South Africa. And I have to say they were amazing. And we raised, I think, $480,000 for Laureus, and it was just such a great way because everyone was crying, saying goodbye to each other. Everyone bonded. We had one very difficult day, the first day. And, everyone moaned and whined and everyone wanted to kill Lucy, poor Lucy. But then what was the day that everyone spoke about? after we finished the challenge, everyone spoke about that first day because you really felt like you'd achieved something. And anyway, we planned to, take this on. We were going to do a Just Challenge in New Zealand. Of course, because of COVID, it's cancelled. But as soon as we can get traveling again, we'll carry on. And it was a great way to raise money. So that was I was getting people, I was organizing with the people, getting them onto the challenge and then and fundraising.
So with all of this traveling, with all of these activities, I mean, you're still a very, very busy woman and you have achieved so much, as we've discussed. I was wondering, is there ever an opportunity for a glass of wine or two?
Of course, that's essential. That's why when I saw wine when you asked me to do the podcast, I'm like, yeah, what's British wine going to ask me about my climbing? So that's why I had to bring in my Antarctica wine. I love a glass of wine after I've had a busy day. It's just nice to wind down and I mean, there's some serious. I mean, people are crazy about wine in Hong Kong, so it's a big market. And my husband's a big wino. He loves to go to these wine dinners. So yes, of course, got to earn my wine, right?
What's coming next year? What's on the horizon?
Well, I'm trying to juggle boarding school with my daughter. That's kind of problematic when you live in Fort Knox. And I always sort of keep a level of fitness whereby if I got asked to do anything, I could just quickly, I'd love at some point maybe to do another 8,000 meter peak again. My dad got a bit carried away when I finished Everest. He went, oh, darling, go and do K2. No British woman has climbed it and survived. I'm like, Dad, what's wrong with you? You're trying to kill us? I was like, I'm like, thanks for that. Anyway, K2 I'm too scared to do. I'm an armchair mountaineer, but I would love to do another climb. I did a triathlon. I've done some desert races. I'm open to anything. I'm very involved with the charities. So, I mean, my day, I get a lot out of every day. And that's another thing. I just love to just do something as much as I can. I don't like to waste time.
Definitely picking up on that, still driven and determined. Thank you so much for such a wonderful interview. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, just thanks for, I'm sort of have sort of strong views of the world and how it is. And, I didn't lose every brain cell at altitude, but thank you very much for having me on. And, I just hope the world gets to understand and appreciate how we live life out here. And I just hope the world finds a way to work together.
Annabelle, thank you.
Thank you.